Joining me today is Violette, Baltimore alt-pop artist whose hypnotic sound matched with universal and organic lyrics are so good. She's stepping into her own spotlight with this project and is a force to be reckoned with. As we're recording this, her most recent single, Stop, is such a gem, and I can't wait to hear the full-titled EP, In Her Beauty Lies My Death and My Life, on August 13th. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Just to kind of get into it, what was the first thing you listened to this morning?
First thing I listened to this morning was a song called Eggshell by a band called Runner.
Okay. Not too bad. I have been really into Dermot Kennedy, if you know who that is.
Oh, yeah.
It's like last night, you're in Baltimore. Are you in Baltimore right now?
Yep, Baltimore.
Okay, so it was rainy all day yesterday, and I was like, this is pretty much like the perfect vibe. So I was like driving home from work last night, and I was like, there's nothing better. There's simply nothing better. So did you grow up in this? So I live in Bowie, if you know where Bowie is.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
So did you grow up in this area?
I moved to Harford County when I was about almost 15.
Okay.
So I'm a transplant.
Still counts.
Yeah.
How was the music scene up there? I feel like DC, because I'm closer to DC, and I feel like the music scenes are completely different in both DC versus Baltimore. How was it growing up in Baltimore?
It was cool. Yeah, up in Harford County, there was its own, like, little local, emo, post-hardcore type scene. And so that was really cool, kind of, there were different, like, parents and groups and stuff that would put on, like, fire hall shows and church shows and stuff like that. So it was really encouraged, and there was definitely a nice scene there. And a lot of those guys are, in the city now playing music still, which is cool.
That's awesome. So growing up was kind of the alt-pop thing where you wanted to go, or was it more so in the post-hardcore pop-punk kind of scene that you were leaning towards?
I grew up in that Warped Tour scene, so I always really liked that stuff, but I also started veering off when I was like 13 into indie rock and, Bright Eyes and Tegan and Sarah, and I lived in North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, right before Baltimore, and the music scene there was incredible. So I grew up with like a lot of more like alternative, probably indie emo bands, and then kind of got into the Warped Tour stuff, and then into the indie world and everything like that. So it's been really eclectic, and I think it was just easier to make more alternative rock, post-punk kind of stuff until a few years ago when we really got into pop and how to work it and started working with different producers and stuff like that.
Absolutely. So Warped Tour, I'm assuming you went to Merriweather for Warped Tour, right?
I went to Merriweather for Warped Tour once.
Okay.
Yep.
I went, I think I've been 3-4 times now at this point. I mean, not that the last year I've gone. But I feel like that venue is just, I think it's perfect for Warped Tour. I can't imagine doing a parking lot Warped Tour. Yeah, because it's just so ingrained in my head in the woods and.
Yeah, in North Carolina it was a little bit more parking lot, and I went to those. I crowd surfed. I think the second year I went to Taking Back Sunday, and my friend fell like directly on top of me and got picked back up, and I was just in the middle of this like crazy Taking Back Sunday mosh pit, which was it was terrifying. I think I was like 12 or 13, so I was definitely not doing what I was telling my mom I was doing. Dropped her off in the tent and was like, yeah, we're not gonna crowd surf, and got a little wild. But it was, those shows there's just some sort of energy to it, and that's always what drew me into that world, was like there's just something really raw and emotive about it.
Absolutely. I took my friend to her first Warped Tour, and it was the last Warped Tour. And I was like explaining it, and I was like, this is how it is, like, it's not, you can't replicate that anywhere. And it was really cool to like be able to like experience that with her. I mean, we were 22, 23 at the time, maybe 21. And it was just like so crazy. And I think shows are, I mean, I'm really happy that we're like at the kind of the point where we can look forward to them almost, hopefully, fingers crossed. And it's just very exciting because I grew up in concert venues. I grew up, I went to my first concert, I was 6, and then my first show was at Wrecker Theater in Baltimore, and it was Versa Emerge, if you remember who Versa Emerge is. And that was the first time I crowd surfed, and like since then, like it's just been part of who I am. And I think that it's very exciting that we can finally be at the place where we can look forward to it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a really weird year without having that escape and that place to go to and like that feeling of community, because you go to a show, and I think the last like proper show I went to was the Japanese House at Autobar.
Yeah.
And it was the best show I have ever been to in my entire life, because it was just everyone was in it and there, and like, she was on fire that night, so it was just like, I'm just waiting to have that again, you know?
Absolutely, and that's such a great venue. I finally saw a show there because I had been there a few times at like as a bar, so I was like there for emo night and stuff like that. And I saw All Time Low there last January, or I guess January before last, whenever it was.
Sometime.
There's so much character. There's just simply so much character.
Yep, that is my favorite venue in the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. What was your first concert you went to?
I think it was Good Charlotte, Newfound Glory, MXPX, Hot Rod Circuit, Honda Civic Tour.
Holy cow, a
Yep.
great one.
Yeah.
A great one.
Yep. Yeah, the singer of Newfound Glory had a wireless mic, which was like blowing my mind because I'd never seen that like in pop punk. But he had this wireless mic and was doing this thing on that tour where he'd like jump off the stage and run around the arena. And so he ran around and just like actually bumped into my mom. And so I'm like, I like come out of the crowd finally and find my mom. We're leaving, and she's like, "Oh yeah, that young man just like bumped into me." And I'm like, "Where was I? I'm like in there, and you're on the side, just like hanging out with Newfound Glory."
Just accidentally.
Yeah.
That's awesome. How old are you?
Oh, 11 or 12, I think.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. So in high school, middle school, would you consider yourself like what was a typical fangirl for that scene?
Probably. Probably. Like I had I was in, I'd go to the store and get all press every month and everything like that. And there's just something about it with, Warped Tour and having alt press and, MySpace and all of that kind of stuff. It was just like this really cool period of time where it felt like music was a really big, close-knit community, and not kind of sporadic and all over the place.
Absolutely. I know my bedroom was for sure covered with alt press. Like I don't understand. Yep. I don't understand. It was a time. It was a time for sure.
Oh, the Census Fail cover, that was like right on my wall.
Oh, yeah. I think it was just it's just so crazy to think back at also like how different music discovery is, because I was looking through those for new bands, like who did they interview this week, and now it's Spotify, Discover Weekly, TikTok, all that. It's kind of a whirlwind.
Yeah, it's a lot of different places, not just like one avenue that's pretty reliable.
Yeah, and it's almost like an overload to some extent, in my opinion, because like I feel like I listen to a lot of very different things, and it's like I open my Spotify Discover Weekly, and it's like the mismatch of a mismatch, and I'm like half of it's like music I would play when I fall asleep, or like
Yep.
The new Childish Gambino or whatever that looks like.
Yep. A little bit of everything, which is more fun now too, because it's like you're able to really express all these different tastes in one place. But it's a lot of music coming at you really fast, and I feel like the shelf life is a little bit shorter than it used to be.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said the shelf life, because it's very accurate in the way that like if all these songs are coming out, and it's like if it's not New Music Friday, like where's it going after that? Like where does the momentum really like come from? And then people get propelled through various different ways.
Yep.
So with this EP, was this all made through COVID? How was the recording process, the writing process for it?
Yeah, so I moved out of a house I was living in kind of in like the northern suburbs of Baltimore into the actual city during COVID. And luckily we were able to kind of put together a studio in my apartment. And so we did everything in this room that I'm in right now, which is in my home. And it was just me and my partner, Brian. And, it was really nice to not have any other like influence or anything going on. And, through COVID, we got really into like period films. because you can watch like 2 of them in one day and then it's time for bed again. So it was making the days fly by pretty quick, and it was giving you like really good escapism. But these movies are kind of like surface level. It's just like Keira Knightley chasing Mr. Darcy around or something. And really, when you like look at the whole thing and how deep it can go, that's kind of what the idea for this EP was just surface level. It might seem more shallow or something, but when you really go deep in, there's a lot more layers to it.
Absolutely. And you did it with your partner Brian, and did you ever find that it was rough just it being you, the 2 of you, or did you think it was easier because it was you did mention external, but no other, commentary or anything like that? Because I know normally there's normally a lot of hands on different things, so I'm just curious of how that was different for you.
It was really nice because there was no, it was just so easy to express ourselves and not be worried about it because we're so comfortable with each other. And it was also we've always hoped to be able to make a record ourselves with just us. And so to kind of have that focus and to be able to like sit with something, and, when you work with other people, they might not be hearing the same things or going for the same things, or wanting to spend as much time on a particular thing. And we were able to get really creative with the sounds we were making and what we wanted to do with it, and able to kind of really discuss the like little nuances that we weren't able to discuss when working with like other producers or something like that, because it'd be, a time crunch, or they'd have a lot of ideas, or, the collaboration process is different with more people in the room, obviously. So just the 2 of us was really nice. It was weird because we're putting the EP out and no one's really heard it except for us. So that's a little wild, but I also really like that it's kind of something to unveil and something that we've worked really hard on, and that, I don't know, it's just really special, I think.
Absolutely. And a few other people that I've talked to have done kind of the same thing, is like they've just hunkered down with the same 1, 2, maybe 3 people to put out their upcoming EP or record. And it's incredible to me because, knowing how secluded this year and a half, time is irrelevant at this point, this last year or so has been for a lot of people, and being able to find those nuggets of beauty and creating pretty much magic in the comfort of your own home, and not having to fly out to this place or drive here or call this person and conference in this one. I think it's incredible, and I think that I almost want to say there's going to be I hope there's a big music renaissance in the next year or so, because I love Taylor Swift, honestly, and with her 2 records, Folklore and Evermore, is a perfect
brilliant records too.
Example of how you just grasp onto that concept. They're beautifully made. Jack Antonoff is a whole other conversation, but it's just I'm very excited to see kind of the next year flow in music, and even TV and film will probably change too. Because there's just something about missing everyone and not having that, and needing music is a way to connect everyone, and so to make it and not be able to go play it is really almost stifling. But I think pop music is already started to really get more honest and open and quote unquote real. Billie Eilish, the biggest pop star in the world, isn't singing about touch my body and blah 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 anymore. She's singing about real shit, and I think what we're seeing through this time is a lot of people really connecting with themselves and singing about real shit, and I think that's better for pop music in general, and hopefully we get a lot of really great quality stuff out of it. I'm so excited. So thinking about shows, is that something, so have you performed as Violette? I know you were in a project prior to this. Have you performed as Violette yet?
Once. We played a show back in November, mid-pandemic, right before it got bad again. And it was socially distanced, and it was amazing to play the songs live. It was really weird when people had to be so far away, and you can't see them because they're far away and they're masked. So it was nice to play, but it was a weird interaction. I felt like it wasn't, it felt like there was like a wall where normally there wouldn't be one. And understandably so, to keep people safe, but I'm definitely looking forward to having, bodies in a room and moving and that kind of emotion to it, because I feel like that's kind of, everyone was scared to put themselves out there, and again, rightfully so, but I think that's what has been missing so much.
Definitely, and I'm, with all these shows being booked and tours and stuff like that, I'm reluctantly buying tickets. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of going, I'm like, if I can't go, I can't go, but like, yep. if we're in the perfect scenario, I will be seeing bleachers, I will be there, I will be crying, it'll be great.
Yes.
Do you have anything coming up with your EP that you're going to be touring with or anything like that, or your dream tour at least?
We're just kind of putting the stuff out and planning as we're kind of going along. I know we're discussing doing like a live stream show and everything like that, and that mm-hmm. would be a lot of fun. Hopefully the shows kind of start coming around the time the EP comes out. That's what we're hoping for. But dream tour, if Muna or the Japanese House will take me, I will go gladly.
We'll make some calls. We'll push some
Perfect.
buttons.
I like it.
So I mentioned a little bit earlier, you were in a project prior to this. How was the transition from being in a band more to a solo project creatively, and then also kind of personally and like mentally?
So my old band had a lot of fluctuation and a lot of just friction involved. We had a lot of members go kind of in and out. And it really started with just me, my partner Brian, and our friend Craig. And that's how it ended, which was, really beautiful and everything like that. And we kind of had started making this transition creatively into pop. Because our full length was just a record that was really hard to make and a lot of friction. And it's not a, happy, joyous record. And we kind of wanted to move away from it sounding dreary and like still have the same feelings and intentions, but make it more accessible and easy to listen to and more fun to play. So we had started to make that transition, and, we've all gotten older, and so priorities changed, and Brian wants to be producing, and he's my, music director for live stuff as well, and Craig is starting a family and off on that adventure and everything like that, and for me, I still just want to do it. There's nothing that I want to do more than be on stage and touring and in the studio and just creating and making music. So it was a pretty easy transition creatively because that's kind of where it was going. Mm-hmm. Personally, it's, a lot of changes and a lot of different things to kind of deal with, but there's something really beautiful about kind of being able to sit with myself and figure out exactly who I want to be and what I want to do, and having that approval of just saying, like, the song, I want it to be this way, and if we try it and I still want it my way, it can be that way. Which in a band you're always kind of compromising, which is a lot of fun too, but there's something about wanting it to feel like me and to be me. And that with this EP particularly was a lot of fun to discover, because it was like my ring would, make a sound on a wine glass and we'd record it and put it in a song. And so there's what feels like my DNA in it, which I've never experienced making music for it to feel exactly like that. And what I was intending is what kind of came out, and how I wanted it to sound is how it actually sounds. And so it's been cathartic and a lot of reflection, but it's been good.
That's awesome. The ring thing is, I think, so cool. Is there any other sounds, random sounds, or weird influences that aren't the typical, like, here's what a guitar sound like and that's why I want the guitar? Is there any other weird nuances in the EP?
Yeah, there's a lot of just like random glitchy noises that are they're rings or yells, or a lot of what you might sound like synth is actually guitar. And so we really wanted to explore how to make guitars sound weird, and like a lot of St. Vincent influence on like any lead parts. But there's an interlude piece on the EP that's just this piano riff, and it turns into almost like a house track by the end of it. And there's a lot of like typewriter sounds and ocean sounds and a lot of really just different vibes to transition it. And that's something I'm super proud of, that we were able to just do something different, and it actually turned out really cool.
Definitely. And the thing about the ring I read on your press release, and I read that, I was like, I love that. I think it's so unique, and I think any artist that really takes the time to do something like that, because I don't, you know, I'm sure you did the ring tap like 30 times, just to get the perfect, like, inkling of a sound.
Yep, I think we actually used them in a pattern, so there's a few different ones, and they actually do something like a little bit different each time. So it's really interesting. I don't even know if you can hear them half the time, but like they're still in there doing like some different melody, which is just, it's just a lot of fun. And those little nuances, like I said, like sometimes you don't get to create that or experiment with it or something like that. And, you know, so when we'd get into situations where like I'm frustrated with the vocal take and I'm having a sip of my wine or something, and you hear that, like that noise, it's just like, oh, let's record that. Like, let's not record vocals tonight. Let's just make a bunch of weird noises and see what happens.
That's incredible. I adore that so much. I think it's very unique, and I love that it can also be like very cathartic. I'm assuming for you, just like, I don't want to sing today, so we're just gonna drink some wine and record those sounds.
Yep.
So when writing and creating these songs, is there, you know, any specific way that you want these listened to? Like, you mentioned putting your diary out there. Is that, you know, what's the ideal listening experience for your audience?
Oh man, anywhere, everywhere. I think headphones or loud in the car is kind of how I've listened to it the most. So that's kind of how I connected with it. I live under a pretty strict belief that once the music is out, it's for everyone else, and my time with it is, you know, my personal time with it is kind of over. Which is really freeing, and, you know, for me creatively, that's kind of when I start to work on more music. So, you know, for me, I think like laying in bed listening to music was always where I went when I needed something, and whether it was angry or sad or, you know, depressed or excited, anything. I always just remember as a kid being in my bed listening to music, headphones, stereo, whatever. And so I hope it's listened to somewhere that, you know, you feel comfortable and safe and can connect with it, and maybe it can be there with you when you get ready to go out or on your way home or after a breakup. And so anywhere and everywhere.
And I think that's the beauty of it, is I think anybody can listen to a song and create their own meaning behind it. And I like that you talked about, after you put it out there, you're kind of, I don't want to say passing the torch, but in some type of way passing the emotions, and like, take it as you will. I think that's so beautiful to say it in that way.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to circle back to the Harford County, Baltimore area music scene. It's notoriously punk pop, or alt rock, post-hardcore. Do you find it kind of difficult kind of seeing yourself in that scene? And because, I mean, even DC isn't very heavily alt pop, it's more so hip hop and probably more punk, what it seems. So how do you see yourself in those scenes?
Baltimore's always been a hard one to crack, I think, which is what is so fun and alluring about it. And I'm pretty obsessed with the idea of one day making myself a staple here. I think it's a slow, it's hard to get into it. And I think where I've landed with my friends and everything, I have friends in, you know, post-hardcore bands, and, you know, the first show I played, I opened for a post-hardcore band. So I'm not stuck to being only opening for pop bands or playing with other pop bands. Obviously, that's kind of, you know, where we're hoping to go with it. But when I saw that Japanese house show, it was sold out, line everywhere in Auto Bar. And so there's people here that I think would be interested and down with what I'm doing. And it's just about finding them. And, you know, I feel like I'm kind of looking under rocks a little bit. But I kind of feel that if it's, you know, if I just find the right, you know, group of people and they love it, then, you know, I think we'll have something. So I'm always just trying to find that one person to just like it, you know?
Absolutely. And so through interviewing some people, and somehow I have found 2 other DMV area alt pop bands besides yourself.
Nice.
So we need to link them all up.
I love it.
Because every time I'm like, there's no way you're here. I mean, growing up in high school, I was definitely more into the pop punk scene. And coming back from college, I went to school in Florida, so I moved back here. I'm way much more into the indie pop, alt pop type of stuff, and I'm like, once COVID's over, we're safe. Like, we need to make the alt pop scene, the pop scene in Baltimore and DC, like, a thing.
Oh,
because I'm just gonna become Thanos and just like bring together like all of these bands and just create a scene myself at this point.
Just sponsor the shows.
So we need to link you guys up because I don't know if you know Vacation Manor.
Oh yeah.
So I
don't know them, but I know they're good. They're awesome.
So I interviewed them, and I didn't realize that one of them grew up here in Bowie.
Wow.
And I was talking about that, and he was like, me too. And we figured out we were like down the road from each other. I'm like, where were you when I was in high school? Where was the scene?
Yeah. I wish we would have had a little bit more of like I wish there was a little bit more of a pop heavy scene any time of my life. Because I think it would have been a little bit quicker to make the transition into actual making pop music. But there's something about, I think, us former pop punk emo kids making pop music. Because there's something a little bit different about our version of pop. Again, like a Billie Eilish, like she, doesn't seem like she grew up listening to Britney Spears. Right. I know she's a Bieber fan and everything like that, but, she's, I think, like any other human right now in this kind of vibe, this area. She's listening to the 1975. She's listening to, all these other bands. I think she's, tweeted about like All Time Low or some of these pop punk bands and stuff like that. So it's, it's people that are coming from this worldly, we talked about it earlier, the Spotify is not just, an All Time Low, it's a Childish Gambino with that and maybe a nighttime playlist. Like, there's so much influence, and I think people with this eclectic taste in the music that we're making with this vast background is, just killer.
It really is, and when I kind of transitioned into listening, I mean, I don't play music at all, so I listen to it. It was very much that transition of I went from, like, I mean, growing up here, you have to listen to All Time Low if you're, like, in this side of the scene. All Time Low, Sleeping with Sirens, Feels to Veil, like, Taking Back Sunday, like, all of these bands, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, the 1975.
Yep.
And then it was like, that's a wormhole, now I'm listening to Coin. And then you're just stacking on top of each other, and then all of a sudden, like, I listen to, like, pop punk now, and I'm like, oh, so emo.
Yep.
Like, I was so angry at 15.
Yep. I'll do it all the time. I'm, like, turning on the starting line, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like... Yeah. Like, who hurt me? Who hurt me at the age of like 12?
I had no reason being that angry listening to like 26-year-old men screaming at 16.
Yep. But there's something about it that you can relate to. But I think as you get a little bit older, it's like, for me, I know I started seeking out female voices, probably getting closer to 21. That most of what I listen to now is female voices. Like, there's just something about, like, I don't know, maybe the maturity between a 26-year-old dude and a 16-year-old female. I think we're about the same. But as you get older, you start finding these, like, that's what I've really fallen in love with pop music, is that there's this space for women that wasn't in pop punk. And that's the thing that, like, I never knew I was left out of. And as I've gotten older, it's just, Muna is one of my favorite bands. And if you listen to their lyrics, it's total, they're an emo band. Totally an emo band. Disguised as like a, awesome pop band. But I think, again, that's kind of what I love about, the 1975 Muna, the Japanese House. They're just all emo bands disguised as pop bands. And that's, kind of where I see myself too.
Exactly. And I think, looking at, younger kids now, and I feel so weird saying that because I'm only 24, so it's like these young kids, but I have a niece who's 12, so like seeing like what she's listening to and like very much more female oriented artists, and which I think is amazing. I think Billie Eilish is a perfect example of like who I would want to be listening to at 12, 13, 14.
Yeah.
And also Olivia Rodrigo. I don't know if you're on that train.
I haven't listened to the record yet because I haven't had time to sit down, and I don't want to. I know it's not one that I need to like be doing something else while listening to. I know it's one I should sit down with.
I think that's also a great example of like, because there's a couple songs on there that are very much Hayley Williams-esque. And I'm just like, I wish I was like 12 listening to this, because I think this would have been like the flame that started the fire on something.
Yep.
And it wouldn't have been, you know, the story so far, you know, or anything like that. Which I think is so incredible, and I'm very excited, like I said earlier, like an almost renaissance of music hopefully coming in the next couple years.
I definitely think so.
So looking at your songs, you've mentioned that you're putting your diary out there. What is one thing in your diary that you would never put into a song?
Ooh. I don't think anything's off limits. Because you can disguise anything with good poetry. You know, like I could be telling you I'm an alien from Krypton, and if I say it in like a really poetic, elegant way and put it into a song, you might not ever know that's what I mean. And that's, you know, kind of going back to saying that once a song is out, it's for everyone else. You know, if someone asks me the meaning and like really wants to know, we can totally talk about it. But I love that when I listen to music, I can think a couple things, like, what do I think it means? And then what do I think that this person meant when they wrote it? And so there's all these different ways to think about it. And there, you know, with the internet, rock and roll isn't rock and roll. It's not as mysterious, you know, Mick Jagger's not allowed to be elusive anymore. Like, right. You know, if Matty Healy tweets something, it's blown out of proportion. And so we're living in this world where the mystique is a little bit taken away. And I think with, you know, putting the meanings of songs out there and letting them just be for the listener, and whatever connection I get to have with the listener and what they feel is totally accurate. Like, how they perceive the song, yes, that's what it is. And how I perceive the song, yes, that's what it is. And our connection is just through the fact that we both have a connection to the song.
Definitely. So more into this EP, who were your main, you mentioned Brian earlier, but is that the only person you collabed on for this EP, or are there other people with a hand in it too?
So our friend Chris Camrata, he plays for Dashboard now, and he was in There for Tomorrow. He played drums on a few of the songs. A good friend of ours, George Ortega, he did some programming on the next song that's coming out, Fall Apart. And then Micah, who produced and mixed the first Violette EP, he mixed this one as well, except for the interlude track that Brian mixed. So we had a few hands in it, but they were all kind of there after the songs were written.
Awesome. Let me make sure I have all of what I have. Hold on. Because I had a question, my brain just like blanked out for some reason.
Oh no!
I like heard a garbage truck and I was like, ah.
I hate when that happens.
I'm just very glad the cicadas aren't making noise at the moment.
Oh yeah,
now my dogs are barking.
That's okay. I have a dog that lives underneath me. And so when we're recording the vocals for this EP, like we've had to go through the whole, like all the dry vocals, all the harmonies, like everything, and make sure there's no like little clip of the dog barking while I'm singing, or like, because we live in the city on like a busy street. So like, we'd be about to track something and then there's a, ambulance or a fire truck or somebody honking or listening to loud music, which like some of those noises I think probably like ended up in the EP either accidentally or purposely.
I was going to say, just add them to the list of nuances that you could just be like adding into it.
We really honestly wanted it to feel like you're in the city.
Yeah. Honestly, recording the cicadas is not a bad idea. Getting a sample from that.
I love it. I gotta keep my ears peeled.
Yeah. So do you want to play a quick game of quick picks where I make you quick pick a song on a very specific scenario?
Sure.
So, no wrong answers here, just whatever comes to your mind. It can be obscure, it can be the most stupidest thing, whatever goes.
Okay.
Your first one, there's three. The first one is you're in an elevator with a pregnant woman and she starts to give birth. What is the first song? I'm going with Under Pressure by Queen for obvious reasons.
Oh, Hands in My Pocket by Alanis Morissette. I don't know why.
It works.
That's what I was thinking about.
The next one is you're on a long overnight drive and the sun begins to rise. What song is playing? I picked Still a Light in the House by Valley. I've done that.
Great
Florida.
song.
I'm sorry?
Great song.
I'm obsessed with Valley. I've done the drive from Florida to Maryland more times than I would like to admit. And every time I put on that song, like what to see the sunrise or the sunset, it's just I don't know why, but it's just like very, very cathartic.
I love it. I'll go with Holocene by Bon Iver.
Oh,
yeah,
that's a great one.
Yeah, any tour I've ever been on, that's the song when it's like peaceful in the van and like you're either driving through the night and the sun's coming up, or it's like the dead of the night and you can see the stars in Arizona or something. Like that's always that's my go-to.
Ooh, I just got like chills thinking about it.
Yeah.
And lastly, you are on the way home from a date with the person in the car. The date went terribly. You're given the aux cord. What song is playing? I picked Hot Girl Summer by Meg Thee Stallion and Nicki Minaj for reasons that I can't explain.
Hands Off by Muna.
Okay, awesome,
Yeah.
awesome.
Basically saying, hey, don't touch me.
This went terribly. Don't take it. Well, thanks for playing. Hopefully that was a little fun. I love to hear everybody's responses on that because like I said earlier, like I listen to a bunch of stuff and I assume a lot of people take in a lot of music. So thinking about the first scenario in your head is really funny.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to circle back. You mentioned touring and now I'm curious. What is kind of your favorite tour experience that you've had thus far?
Ooh. That's a good question. It's been so long, so everything I'm just like, every tour experience has been great. There's just something, we were watching the Cruella movie, I think the other night, or maybe it was, no, it's not that, Gilmore Girls. We've been on a Gilmore Girl kick. I don't know why, but there's like that part where like Lane's band is coming home from tour and they're all in the van and like the one guy's like, okay, everyone lean forward, and the van starts to go. And I think those little moments are that's the highlights of any tour. It's just like the little dumb things that happen, or like that you've named the van, or the funny thing where the van like now has some issue to where if you don't kick it 3 times before you get in, like the tire goes flat or something. Like there's always something really weird, but it's just like that feeling of, okay, cool, we're going to the next place, let's get in there and go. Like that's the most fun, and then just performing is, everything.
Definitely. So I have one final question for you. Musicians have the ability and the platform to leave marks on the world, various ways, larger or smaller. What is the mark that you kind of want to make?
Oh, what a question. I just want to leave a little better, like leave the world a little better than I found it. I just want people to not feel alone, to be able to listen to what I make and to know, like, someone else feels that way. Like, someone else is going through this. Someone else has felt how I feel now, whether it's, elated or terrible or any of that. Because that's what music's always been for me, is just knowing I'm not alone in it. And again, you go to, shows and you see hundreds of people who feel the same way or the same ways and connect with the same band. And there's just that feeling of, if you love a song and then you go see that artist, you not only feel understood by the artist, but by the people that you're with. And that's, you know, that's what I hope I get to do at some point, is just to create a little place that everyone can, you know, feel a little bit safer and a little bit more understood.
Definitely. And I think that's great. And I think that, again, the beauty of music is having that space, and anyone taking up that space that, you know, really needs it at the time, or whatever they want to interpret that, and being able to, you know, really just hone in on what you need to feel when listening to music, or seeing a show, or whatever, watching a music video, whatever that looks like. I think that that's really the beauty of it. And you know, that's why I listen to music, is because I like to felt like, you know, feel those things, and, you know, be acknowledged that I should feel those things.
That it's not weird to feel, you know, that's the human, that's what we're doing here, in my opinion, you know. And I think that's the beautiful part about living now, is that we are more connected. It's just about how are we going to use that, you know? Are we going to use it to connect and to share art and film and stories? And because that's, you know, and jokes, like, that's what makes it so, you know, two random people can be having a talk on the internet about music, is because we love music, and it's a human connection. You know, that's what I want more of, is just, you know, film recommendations, book recommendations, sharing art and conversation, and, you know, food. Like, that's what I'm looking forward to getting back to, you know, once we're kind of past the pandemic, and what I'm hoping, you know, we do going forward with, you know, a music renaissance. I hope along with that we get a connection renaissance, to where we can use our tools for good, and, you know, just make sure that we're all okay.
Beautifully said.
Thanks.
I must say, beautifully said. Well, hopefully this was an all-access pass to your new favorite artist, Violette. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.